I awakened to my dark room as I used one hand to rub my eye and the other to clumsily attempt to turn off my alarm. I squint as I look at the time. Why did the test have to be in Denver? I lay there a few more moments before reminding myself that ACT stands for ACT, and by stands for, I mean literally spells act, and does not stand for at all. And thus acting usually involves doing something, which I was currently not. So I got up and decided to act like I had got enough sleep. 20 minutes later, I sat down in my car and turned the ignition. 20 minutes later, I was driving. 20 minutes after that, I was still driving. And 20 minutes after that, I was still driving. But then I parked, and I was not driving, so that was a nice change. I then exited my vehicle and walked to the front door of the testing center, which, to describe it as janky, would be a euphemism. I then opened the door and hopped in line before I was directed to wait in another line, so I took one more step to the right. Time elapsed until I was face to face with the child. She couldn't have been more than 14. Tasked with deciding if I was a healthy human being or if I would facilitate the spread of the thing that need not be mentioned. She looked up at me. What's your name? Alex Treat, as in trick or treat. Have you been in contact with any known or suspected cases of COVID in the last 2 weeks? No. Have you used any fever-reducing medication within the last 24 hours, such as aspirin, ibuprofen, or death? No. Have you had chills, fever, felt lightheaded, coughed, felt dizzy, had a rash, sprained your ankle, had back pain, felt mildly uncomfortable, sneezed, stepped on something pokey, burnt your tongue, or breathed in the last 72 hours? I hesitate for a moment, and the child looks over her glasses at me. Could you repeat that last one? Or breathed in the last 72 hours? Oh, of course not. Well, please, step into the other line. I take one step to my left. I wait in line for 5 minutes. Ah, Mr. Treat, it's a treat to have you. Never heard that one before. 5 minutes later, I find myself in the corner of a janky kitchen, surrounded by females. Donuts sit before me in a closed box, but they're guarded by the inscrutable gaze of the female other, and the impregnable provocation of social awkwardness. Amidst the death silence, I look at the donuts longingly. After a minute or so of uncomfortable silence, one of the females cracks and asks, So, has anyone taken the ACT before? 3 minutes of strained conversation then occurs as the females try to battle back the looming awkward silence with small talk and mirthless laughs until they eventually lose the silence and it takes over once again. I stare at the donuts. After another 2 minutes, the same female as before, who couldn't take it, asks, So, what's everyone doing for summer break? Once again, this valiant attempt enlists about 3 minutes of clearly forced conversation before it all withers and dies. In the remaining time, I revel in the awkwardness as they all clearly feel and smile as I watch them flounder. After a while, we're all summoned to the classroom, wherein the lights are falling off the ceiling, and the carpet could be aptly described as the garbs of numerous homeless men sewn into a patchwork quilt and laid upon the floor. I sit down in my chair and try not to focus on the skinny dude in baggy jeans with jet white black hair and chains dripping out of his pockets. The proctor walks to the front and monotonously reads the instructions assigned to her. She then hands out the tests and tells us to only fill out the preliminary sheet that's necessary for us to receive our scores. I obey. She then starts the test, and I spend the next hour answering questions about sponge-toed mountain goats and why it's a tragedy the lighthouses are automated these days. I then spend the next hour doing math at a very rapid pace and forgetting that 66 divided by 5 isn't 33 and really wanting to cheat and change my answer, but then not because morals. I then spent the next half hour noting that the sentence structure, she whom is the director humorously prefers jazz, is stupid. And finally, as my brain cells died, I spent the next 30 minutes discovering what happens if you put metal in boiling water. Spoiler, it gets hot. Then there was a surprise section. Skinny gang dude, obviously eager to leave, told the proctor he didn't, want to do it because it was a survey. The proctor believed him, but, made sure that he had to do it anyway. The man in charge said he knew nothing about the skinny boy's release from the survey, and so he should just do it anyway, just to be safe. And they were right. It was a survey. A survey of how much information you could derive about the rising water levels from an informational paragraph. Upon completing the in no way optional, but thought to be optional final portion of the test, the proctor told us to go home. However, before people walked out the door, I asked her if she would like us to do the other half of the preliminary information sheet that was necessary for the test to be accepted and to get our scores. She said yes, so I did that. I then left. But, as I cast one glance toward the beloved donuts for whom I so eagerly longed, only to discover they had been unfaithful, allowing themselves to be eaten by another. So yeah, that was my janky ACT testing experience. I was surprised this place even got certified to host testing because they clearly had no idea what they're doing. But hey, at least it's all over with. Now, as for life, I've been practicing not dying, and so far I'm doing really well. I've reached like a nearly 20-year streak. After my last live email, I didn't do much before heading to bed, other than a bit of Bible reading. The following morning, I thoroughly wasted before going and playing D&D at Neo's, and then me and Neo got destroyed in a joint game of Catan. The next day I had work, and Jake texted me, let me know that his engagement was official with Charity, which everyone could see from 10,000 miles away, but it was still mildly exciting. I then played ping pong over the Myers for a while before heading back over to anime, where me and Joe debated if cups exist for the solid 3 hours. I must say, I think that's topped the list of most pointless philosophical discussions I've had in quite some time. Not, mind you, because asking if cups exist is a stupid question. Clearly, it's a very interesting one. But rather because it took me and Joe 3 hours to realize we actually agreed the whole time, and we were just, emphasizing different things and being really stubborn. But yeah, it was still mostly a good time. The next day I did school. The amount of homework I got effectively doubled, and I talked with Alan and Matt about the Apostolic Church for ages. I was actually pretty disappointed in their reasons for not being Orthodox or Catholic. The Catholics only got like 2.4 strikes, and the Orthodox got like 1.9, which is pretty pathetic if you ask me. I then played some VR and got this super hot score. I know. I deserve all your praise and adoration. 159,200. Unfortunately, I still didn't manage to beat my high score, but oh well. After that, I partook at Ratio Christie in the game night, which was frankly pretty lame. There were a lot of new people there, and everyone was into their games, and it was hardly any decent conversation. Plus, as a minor fact, I got destroyed in Catan, but I assured you that's hardly a factor of why I thought Ratio Christie was lame. The following morning, I woke up early for in-person school, which I did in a tired manner, before also doing homework in a tired manner, and then binged a bit of anime in a very tired manner, and then I went to youth group in a tired manner before I finally went to sleep, which relieved my tired manner. Then, upon no longer being sleep deprived, I went to in-person school once more, and then barely made it in time for my online calculus class, because, for my online calculus-based physics class, because I totally forgot it existed. And then after that, I had a bit of conversation with my Aunt Amber, who was staying at our house in California for a bit. The following day, I had homework, but as I was doing such, I got this call from Loveland, Colorado. And, I know some people in Loveland, so I was considering picking it up, but I kind of have this policy of not answering numbers under my contacts, which has saved me from many sales calls thus far. So I let it ring. However, the same number called back, and about a dozen math problems later, I decided it was best to pick it up. So I did, and it turned out it was an Army salesman dude trying to get me to join. So I tried to politely dismiss him by saying I wasn't interested in joining the Army, but he kept pressing. And so before I knew it, I told him I was a pacifist. Now, I know that doesn't seem very eventful, and it's not. But you see, the issue is, I'm not a pacifist. In other words, I lied. And quite frankly, I was quite surprised I lied. Of course, my reasoning process was clear. Tell him you're a pacifist, and he'll have to leave you alone because there's no way you can get a pacifist to join the Army. But I was just, surprised to see I did that. Personally, I consider myself a very honest person. But thinking back, this isn't the first time I've just instinctively lied. For instance, one time, a member of our D&D group was inviting another member of our D&D group over to her place to watch anime with her. And so without thinking, I just blurted out my internal, no, don't do that dialogue. So, at which point she asked me if I was making an insinuation against her character, which I 100% was. But I lied and said anime is not worth watching twice in a row, and that's why he shouldn't go over to her place. So besides being slightly concerned that such occasions have come to make me ponder the nature of lying, first off, it's not like I premeditated either of those responses. I just said them. So to what degree can I be culpable for them? Also, second, despite the fact that, such actions would not be the ones I would have perpetrated had I given myself, a full second to think, were those lies morally wrong? Would it have been better for me to just admit to the D&D girl that, yeah, I think her character is sketchy? Third, when I did say that I lied, I did it really smoothly. I didn't miss a beat, and I was able to calculate exactly the response given the context of the conversation in half a second when, her response brought attention to the problem that I'd had in my hands. And at the time, I was expected to give the response. Nevertheless, if you ever played Werewolf or Mafia or Among Us or any of those other games in which lying is expected of me, you will know I'm consistently when I'm consciously trying to lie, very bad at it, abysmal beyond belief. So why is there this stark incongruity between my ability to lie at these two different times? Is it perhaps that instinctively lying uses a part of your brain that's consciously doing so? And perhaps it could be the case that I instinctually lied and actually believed it to be true, and then only shortly thereafter did I recognize I had uttered a falsehood, thus explaining why I was able to play off so smoothly. Perhaps it's traditionally argued that lies are morally wrong because they hinder one's ability to pursue truth, which is an objective good, hence why lies are not harmful or even beneficial are considered wrong. But if that's so, then wouldn't deceptions be equally wrong? But most of us don't want to say that because, we want to say that saying something flat out like, I like pineapple on pizza is worse than grabbing 2 pieces of pineapple pizza and then throwing away the pineapple when no one's looking, despite the fact that both lead people to the conclusion that he likes pineapple pizza, which is clearly a false one because no one could possibly like pineapple pizza. So yeah, the occasion, though not very momentous in and of itself, did reveal a disturbing but perhaps benign condition within my psyche that warrants more investigation and thought. After that debacle, I decided to beat a VR game I called, that is called Expect You to Die. I Expect You to Die. Though I did have to look up how to solve the puzzles twice, which we don't talk about that. I then played soccer with the usual group, did a bit of reading upon getting home, and watched some anime to round out the night. The next morning, I read the Bible for a few hours trying to catch up with my year-long Bible reading plan. I've been consistently like a week behind now for like 2 months. But my reading was interrupted when some people came over for brunch at my house, unbeknownst to me. So I then proceeded to eat and converse with said people. Morgan and Amber were there as well. And the conversation was decent. The guy I was talking to mostly just played the part of the skeptic. And he just like put forward challenge positions. Then when I challenged him, he was like, I don't know. But, there's some good conversations that came out of it. And it was mostly a win. However, it wasn't until City texted me that I realized I had 100% forgotten about D&D. And it was already 15 minutes late. So I had to leave quite abruptly and race over there. That D&D session, I pulled quite a few clutch wizard Brigbane moves. So it was pretty cool. Also, my character's a wizard, in case that wasn't already common knowledge. I then teamed up with John against Neo and City in a game of Small World and got destroyed. Yeah, my performance was actually quite poor. And then after that, Neo would tackle the dishes, and then City and I almost beat the Wii Tank game. Seriously, we got like 2 levels away. Now, I know that a game with the imposing title, the Wii Tank game, might not sound difficult, but I assure you, it is anything but easy, and I've sworn a solemn oath to one day defeat that game. Someday. The following Monday I did school, went to work, did homework, and then went to the Myers where Jake got a pretty good conversation in before Caleb and I headed to Animan, which was good. Tuesday, I intentionally slept in and missed class. Well, by intentionally, I mean I made a cost-benefit analysis, which was more valuable, being counted absent from Spanish class and having a half-brushing brain for the rest of the day, or sleeping in through Spanish class and having a fully functioning brain for the rest of the day. And I must say I made the right choice because I was able to get a ton of homework done that day, and I even enjoyed my calculus-based physics homework. I know, what kind of freak am I? After getting that done, I then did some Bible reading before heading over to Retro Christie, where we listened to a guy from Church of Science talk about, well, really his own personal beliefs, which were, not limited to 1. If you're homesick and you pray about it, God will ensure you're never homesick again. 2. God will always heal you if you have enough faith. Therefore, the only reason the Church of Science people die is because they don't have enough faith. 3. When God gave us dominion over, I quote, creeping things, God also meant by that dominion over, quote, creepy things. Stuff like having your knee turned sideways is creepy. Therefore, you have dominion over it. Yes, he actually argued that. 4. Genesis 1 and 2 talk about 2 different creation narratives by 2 different gods. But no, he's not a dualist. Somehow. 5. Matter is real, but not real. So when you die, but don't die, you could go to hell, which isn't hell, forever, or maybe just a little while. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, just want to let you know, I am now a Christian Scientist. Yeah, no way. But I will say, this talk nevertheless was beneficial because prior to this talk, when filling out college applications, I may have not checked the Christian Science box because I thought I thought it was like, I'm a Christian and I like science, so I'm a Christian Scientist. Yeah, those mean very different things. But yeah, we listened to that talk, which I think all of us agree was pretty stupid. And then we collectively pointed our fingers and laughed at the Christian Scientist's direction for the next 2 hours or so, which was surprisingly enjoyable. I now understand why making fun of others is enjoyable. The following day was quite snowy, and upon my drive to school, I drifted amply upon the streets. Well, at least in a mostly 10% safe manner. I then got home and took dad drifting, which I know may sound like I'm obsessed with drifting, but it's true, so moving on. I then had work, which was normal, before I watched the rest of Avatar, which was overall decent as a pseudo-anime goes. And I still feel like people, hype it up a bit too much, though. After doing that, I went to a youth group, which me and Ben destroyed everybody in Spikeball, and we made a really good team. Just recently, me and Ben played, both left-handed and beat Joe and Sam twice. Not bragging at all. Upon arriving home, I watched a bit more anime before reading a book on typology, but I must say it's more like a mystical psychoanalysis typology, so I mostly learned what not to believe. I then did school, spent the entire day doing homework and classes, and it took me ages to get through the recording of me trying to speak a godforsaken language that I don't like, aka Spanish, because every time I would make some little mistake and I have to start all the way over again. Seriously, such a huge pain. However, when I finally finished homework at 5 in the afternoon, I would then introduce Mom and Grace to an anime called Shield Hero, and we all watched that together. I also managed to get Dad involved, and he now too has been infected with the rampant virus of anime. Also, I made a Spotify playlist of all the anime intros I like. Yes, I do realize that seems a bit obsessive, and I'm sane, I assure you, probably. The next morning, I drove out to Loveland to help a family my dad knows named the Hobsons move, and they pay $30 an hour, so definitely can't complain. I then took Grace to the Macy's and went to go pick up Ben to take him to soccer. So I did so, and we drove to soccer and proceeded to play, and that went well. Upon arriving home, I read a bit more of the aforementioned psychology book and watched some anime. Saturday morning, I read some of the Bible and watched some anime before playing airsoft for 5 hours. Here's a picture of the guys that played with us. What is that? Interesting. And it was pretty great. I did pretty decent this time. Although one guy, Nate, got a new gun and he thoroughly destroyed us. After airsoft ended, Ben and I were pretty exhausted, but we still grabbed 7 rolls at Vern's before heading home. Then, out of character, I proceeded to sleep at 7 or so because I was just that tired. But then after sleeping like 2 hours, I woke up and ended up just thinking for, I kid you not, a solid 4 hours and 30 minutes. It was quite unfortunate in that I could not go back to sleep. But I did get to think about some cool stuff. So it wasn't until 1:30 in the morning that I finally got myself up, read my book for a while, about an hour, which finally allowed me to feel tired enough to go to sleep. I mean, trust me, if you read this book, you would be bored to go to sleep too. The following morning, I navigated the extreme social awkwardness of Ben's childhood friend coming over with his family and everyone just literally sitting around staring at phones for, I kid you not, 30 minutes. I finally stepped up and braved the social awkwardness and coerced everyone to do Nerf wars and groundies, which everyone only mildly enjoyed, but then I did get Ben and his childhood friend to actually talk, so I feel like my job was well done. Brushes off his shoulder. After that, I went to D&D, where my wizard had an uber fail session. Basically not a single one of his spells hit, which was super sad. And then we didn't have Bible study, but instead we just played games. And yep, we did dishes too. The next morning, I had school, which was quite productive. I did work, some Bible reading, did anime, debated if pirating stuff was wrong. And in case you're holding your breath out there, it was decided that yes it is. Tuesday, I had mucho school, decided that instead of watching anime while I ate, I would watch YouTube videos, well, except at dinner, about random things I should know. For instance, what is the best malware software to install on my computer? And what browser is best to use? I then read more of my psychology book, watched some more anime, and participated in a great deal of Ratio Christie. At this point, I've got Joe and Caleb coming pretty consistently, plus Morgan usually shows up at Ratio, and it has almost doubled in size thanks to me. Wednesday, I had more school and work, where I finally got my paycheck, which I super needed, and then I did homework and went to youth group, and upon returning home, watched some anime. The following day at school, I took a math test, which I thought I aced, but I guess only got a 92%, so sad, as Molly would say. I then did homework and read the Bible before going to an in-person calculus-based physics lab, which was surprisingly enjoyable. See, it was during this lab and my aforementioned physics homework that I realized a marvelous truth. Math is actually useful. I mean, I was actually able to use calculus for something other than just like getting good grades, and it was actually quite cool. I don't know, I found it exciting. Upon returning home, I did some more reading before me and the fam did an anime marathon together until the wee hours of the night. Friday, I did homework before I took to Grace's and Macy's. I had this like weird time window where there wasn't like worth driving all the way home, so I ended up just camping out in my car and listening to instrumental music in the Walmart parking lot while eating a Subway sandwich for a while. It was the first time I just sat, and I guess not in silence, but in a state of like thoughtless waiting, just listening. So yeah, it was the first time I sat like that without anywhere to be or anything to do or anything on my mind. It was, interesting. Surprisingly relaxing. And I'm inclined to think if I could just rest like that, even just once a week, my life might be significantly better for it. But yeah, I did that until I had to drive to pick up Ben, and I took him and myself to soccer, which went well and was fun. Upon arriving home, I finished a typology book, which I'm glad because that was a pain. And then I finished reading the anime series I was watching before talking with Jordan for an hour and a half, and then doing an anime marathon part 2 with the fam until the wee hours of the night. Saturday, I woke up early for my ACT, which has already been depicted in quite some detail. And upon arriving home, was absolutely brain dead. I worked on this Lifedema and finished the anime me and my family were watching then, and then of course I went to sleep. The next day, I caught up on Bible reading, fixed my rollerblades, watched some anime, went to Neo's where we had a good D&D session, and then played Bang and Small World until 1:30 in the morning. Monday, I did school with an overcooked brain, went to work, did some work or homework before watching this really good anime called Steins Gate, and then heading to Anime where Jake actually attended, which was cool. Ben came, but ended up deciding he didn't want to do it again because he found the anime we were watching incredibly boring, which is definitely fair. Steins Gate is kind of slow. I then did school come Tuesday, watched some more of Steins Gate, hung with Mom, went out for coffee, watched some more of Steins Gate. I must say, this one really has got me hooked. Before heading to Ratio Christie and engaging in spontaneous charity. See, ever since I talked to Alan a while back, I've been putting aside roughly 50% of my income for virtuous purposes. And at Ratio Christie, we're talking about how it's best to give, and Morgan turned it into a, "Hey, Alex, what are you waiting to give for, huh?" Which I responded, "I'm waiting to find the best allocation of my resources, that's all." But then everyone kept pressuring me not to wait. So, in what felt like a moment of triumph, I whipped out my phone and sent $400 to some random charity that Caleb knew of. Now, in the moment, my inner dialogue was like, "Oh, so you think I won't do it, huh? You think I'm really just scared to let go of my money, and that's why I haven't given it away yet? Well, watch this!" Boop. But in hindsight, I realized the aforementioned inner dialogue wasn't really in accord with the whole spirit of charity, which is why I'd put the whole money aside in the first place. And second, I ended up just nullifying the very reason I had the money in the first place, as long as I did, namely to find its best use. So what started out as a, "Ha! Told you I would do it," turned more into a "Oh, oops," kind of moment. But oh well. The next morning, I unintentionally slept in and missed Spanish class and math class, which was an ouch. And by the time I woke up, it was time to go to work, which I did. And then I did my homework, went to youth group, and upon arriving home, talked to William, which was good. I missed that kid. Did more homework and debated with Alan through Discord. Finally, yesterday, I had school as per usual. I took Grace to school and went to my physics lab, which was mediocrely stressful because the equipment wouldn't work, and we ran out of time, but oh well. Upon returning home, I finished Steins Gate. The end was kind of disappointing, but it was a really good show. And finally, I spent 2 hours trying to systematically find all the papers concerning the validity of the Myers-Briggs, only to discover that's stupid hard, and my methods were ineffective, aka I failed. But yeah, that brings me to the present, where I've spent the majority of this morning typing up a live email, and there you are. Talk to you guys soon, as always. And if you get a chance, you should, see my awesomeness in Beat Saber. Like, I'm really starting to suspect that if they sped it up or something, it looks like they sped it up or something on the screen, because it doesn't look that fast in the headset. But I am really fast. Anyway, I'll see you all later.